Welcome to Parenthood Bites, the podcast where we explore life as a parent in tech. I'm your host, Chow, and I have over 15 years of experience in tech, and I'm also currently working as a career coach. I'm the proud mother of three incredible boys. In each episode, we have an inspiring guest who will share their remarkable story. You'll find their wisdom and insights both relatable and enriching, because after all, we're all in this parenting journey together. So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 68 of Parenthood Bites. Today we're back for part 2 of our conversation with Seung, a senior technical operations associate in the Bay Area and parent of 2 kids, ages 16 and 11. We'll dive into his insights on work-life balance and explore how his relationships with his kids and the bond between his kids have evolved as they grow older. Thanks for joining us again, Seung. So I'd like to start this part by asking, what would be your biggest struggle or challenge being a parent in tech?
Most of the time, I think my biggest challenge right now is just having them talk to me about stuff. Like I could tell like something's bothering them, and I'm like, "Hey, what's wrong?" And I thought we were tight, but when you really ask them, they still don't want to talk to you. They're more comfortable talking with their friends, or even with my wife. They tell us some stuff, but I don't feel like they talk to her that closely. I think that's my toughest challenge right now, especially with a teenager and then the preteen. They're going through a lot of different changes and challenges at this age, right? Especially a teenager. I know, like, as a teenager, like, I remember when I was a teenager, I thought I knew everything. Like, so I can understand why she's like, oh, I don't need to talk to you. I'm fine. It's okay. Like, I could handle it. But I'm just like, if you need to talk, we're always here. Like, as parents, we're like, we want you to talk to you. And the only good thing about carpooling or picking them up at school, like, sometimes in the car they open up more. Like, they'll talk to you more in the car than they would at home for some reason. Well, not for some reason. I think it's because they're more distracted with, like, the internet and playing games online or being on the devices. So whereas in the car they're kind of stuck. So I find sometimes the cars is kind of good to kind of have them talk about stuff and like just kind of go through the day and what they're doing. But other than that, like, I think for me that's the biggest challenge is that. And now, as they're getting older, especially for the younger one, is like, just becoming more responsible. I think my younger one, she still like kind of will lie around, or like she expects you to do stuff for her. And I'm like, no, you got to become, like, I want her to become more independent. And so, like, hey, I'll show you how to make your own mac and cheese. You could do it yourself. And so eventually, I think she's getting it, helping out a bit more around the house and stuff. And then just like kind of being able to
Mhm.
talk more. Younger one especially, I think, is less inclined to talk. But I could hear her talking to all her friends and stuff. When I ask her questions and I could tell like she's bothered by something, like I want her to talk to me, like I think it's a little bit rougher. So she has like a school counselor that she goes to, and so like the counselor will tell me stuff, but it's harder to get her to talk to me about stuff. That's the biggest for me right
That's
now.
good that she's willing to go to the counselor, though, so she at
Yeah,
least
yeah,
has someone to talk to. I tell my kids, I'm
yeah,
like, you have school counselors, you should take advantage of that. I know I
yeah.
definitely didn't take advantage of it in high school or middle school, and I keep telling them they should as well. But
Yeah.
it's also like, don't you wonder? You're just like, I'm such a cool parent. Why wouldn't they want to talk to me?
Exactly.
Right? Like,
Why would you wanna talk to me? Like, what have I ever done?
yeah, you're like, I would talk to me.
Yeah.
I'm freaking awesome. And they're just like, no, I'm fine.
Yeah. My wife was like, "Oh, no, that's just their age," and especially, like, she was reading all these articles about, like, kids that grew up through the pandemic, and they were closed off, and I could very much see that. Like, she used to be, I felt like she was much more outgoing and social until, like, after the pandemic when she was stuck inside and then the classes inside. She seems to be more cloistered now, and I guess my wife was saying, like, that's more common that happens with kids that had gone through that. But the irony is I feel like she's makes friends so much easier than, like, my older one does. The younger one will, like, first day of school, she came home with like, "Oh, I made a new friend," and like already she was like calling her on the phone and talking to them like for like 2 hours. I'm like, what? But I feel like they still have some type of anxiety or something about like being out in the open. And that's the thing that concerns us the most. And I think that's what she was talking to the school counselor about nowadays.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I do feel like whenever we ask the kids, you want to go somewhere, it's always no. Where do you want to go?
Yeah.
Nowhere. I
Nowadays,
just want to
they're
stay
just
home.
too used to being home. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
just want to stay home. And
Yeah.
it's like, I by default, I want to stay home. So I'm like, I'm great with that. But then I have
Yeah,
to, right?
yeah.
I have to take a step back and be like, no, that's not the best for them.
Yeah.
Staying home is not the
Yeah.
best, but that's what they want to do the most.
Yeah, and especially for me, like we were working in IGN, like I like playing video games. I do like sitting at home. I'm like, oh, you want to stay home? All right, I'll just play video games. Or like we could do something else. Both of them like playing games. The older one always tries to make me play Fortnite with her, but I'm not very into it. But the younger one, like we play two-player games a lot, the co-op games, and so like we bond over that, and then we talk about stuff during that time. So it's pretty.
That's good. As long as there's something
Yeah.
that, you can do
Yeah.
together
Hmm.
and have fun together. So, what do you do for work-life balance? What is your approach?
So we talked about again. This is something like I've read a lot about online. It's like, I think for work-life balance, when I'm at work, that's it. Like all I do concentrate is work. I don't check texts. I told my kids like, yeah, if something happens, they have to call me. Otherwise, I'm not gonna check texts. But yeah, when I'm at work, I strictly work, and then when I'm home, it's strictly home. My laptop never turns back on. Once the day is over, like that's it. Luckily nowadays, like I'm not on call. Like when I was doing other support, it was rotating. So there were weekends where you were on call, and then you got called, and you had to answer the phone and work on whatever issue was coming up. Luckily on call rotation. So on the weekends, it's basically just spend it as much time with the kids. Lately, it's been trying to get them to help me do some work in the backyard, which is like like tea. I'm like, oh yeah, can you sweep that? Like, and then they're gone. I'm like, wait.
Yeah, before you even ask the next thing, right?
Yeah, I'm like there's still like a lot of stuff going on here. Where did you go?
They're not going to stick
I'm like,
around
oh,
for
I
the
thought
next
we're
thing.
done. Yeah, I thought we are done. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
We barely did anything, but it's funny. But I also feel like, oh yeah, I guess you don't have to do it. I'll just do it. Like sometimes I feel like it's more work trying to get them to do something than to just do it myself. So it's okay. The other one is like she was regimented. She'll do her chores. Like we have pets, right? Like rabbit. She'll clean the cages and make sure that everything is done on the weekends. She'll do it. But sometimes we're like, man, it's really getting dark here. Are you gonna go clean that bunny cage or what? She's like, I will. It's like Sunday. It's like 8 p.m. Are you sure you can do
You're like, is it going to get done?
it? Yeah.
But eventually, right?
Eventually it gets done, yeah. She'll do it, but eventually it takes a long time sometimes. Sometimes she'll do it like early on, but sometimes you're like, no, I have to go for a run first, and then I have to do this.
See, sometimes it makes me worried, and I'm just like, what are they going to do when they move out for college? Like, how did our parents feel? They must have been freaking out. It's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, you tell them to do a thing, and it gets done maybe like 7 hours later. So it's like, what about when there's no one telling them to do the thing?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Now it makes sense why some people's apartments were the way it was.
We'll see how it goes.
But when they're on their own, they probably have their own.
They're both kind of messy. I've had this laissez-faire kind of like deal with the kids. I'm hoping eventually they'll learn, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a very strict parent. I think my wife probably bugs it more than I do, but I'm like, eventually they'll get it. Because like I just kind of think about like the way I was, and I'm like, oh, eventually you get it. I'll get it, and they'll eventually get it. So I've been kind of like hands off. Well, one reason is because they don't listen to me anyway. The other reason is like I think kids develop on their own. Like I said, like innately, my daughters are very conscious about like grades and doing their homework and and I've never told them to. Like I feel like, especially from kindergarten to like sixth grade, like I was like, it doesn't matter. Like I worked in college admissions. I have never asked anyone for a transcript of their kindergarten or sixth grade report card. So it doesn't really matter. I'm like, as a kid, like you should have fun. Like you should just go ahead and do what you want. It's okay. And eventually things click and they kind of go on. And I feel like they have. Like academically, like I said, I've never had to push them and they decide, oh, like I want to get all A's. Like the chores and stuff, they have set chores and they'll do it and they'll rush through it and then kind of like get rid of it. And we have to kind of like push it and stuff. So that's the only thing. Like I'm like, should I push more of it? But I'm like, oh, it's there. they'll want to do it. And then, like I said, the other one's like self motivated. She's like, oh, I'm gonna join this sport and that sport, and I'm gonna do those sport, and I want to be really good at it. I was like, oh yeah, if you need a coach or you want to go to like a private club and stuff, I could send you there. And she's like, oh, stuff like that. They all have their interests, right? Like the younger one was really into art, and so like she asked me to get like a bunch of art supplies and other stuff, and she does on her own. So that's fine too. So like, we support her in that and do other stuff. But yeah, their room's a mess. Chores are kind of iffy. But I feel like eventually, like as an adult, like if you have the foundations, they'll eventually get it. I would bet a whole lot of money that when my daughter has her own place, it's gonna be spotless. Because it's hers, right? So like she doesn't care because she's like, oh, it's like it's not really my house or something. I don't know. I think there's some disassociation in her mind, but I would 100% guess like if she had her own place, it'd be spotless, and she'd be like very like if I went to visit, she'd be very anal about like, oh, don't put that
Right.
there. Get a
You better
closer.
use a coaster.
Yeah, exactly. I'm more than 100% sure she's gonna do. She'll be like that. The younger one might be iffy though.
I feel the same about my middle one. I think like
Yeah,
his house is gonna be just perfect. Just
yeah, yeah,
perfect. But right now he's kind of just like, whatever, it's your
yeah.
house. Like
Whatever. It's
my
not mine.
room, it's bearable, right? It's not
Yeah, yeah,
messy, but it's also like he'll vacuum in his
mhm,
room. But
yeah,
like once you step out of his room, that's not
mhm.
within his,
Yeah. That's like
that's not my business.
common areas, not mine.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I'll
Yeah,
vacuum my room and
right.
outside, I don't know. So I
Yeah,
feel like his house will be pretty
yeah.
the other two. We'll see.
Yeah.
So, what are some things that help you relax or unwind? You said play video games.
Yeah, I still play a lot of video games, but now I find my house chores help me relax. Like like working in the backyard, like doing like little chores, like cleaning the garage. I think it's mainly just because it's away from everyone. Then and exercising. Like I have a treadmill in the garage, so I go there. When the kids do want to hang out with me, that's fun.
When they do want to.
Yeah, when they do want to. Like, especially, like I said, we were like, what was it? We were playing like some co-op game. It Takes Two. I don't know if you ever played it. It Takes Two. It's like a two-player game, which is funny because it's about like a couple going through a divorce, but they get turned into like these little clay and figures, and then they have to kind of like figure. You kind of work together with on puzzles and things to kind of like try to get them back to human form. But it was fun. Like we played that for a long time together, and then we played Overcooked for a while. Did you ever play Overcooked?
We tried that. It's hard. We tried.
Yeah, it is
Me and
hard.
the kids, we tried, and then it's like, oh no, there's a fire. Oh no,
Yeah.
then someone gets pissed off because my
Yeah,
middle one,
yeah.
he gets pissed
You
because
gotta be careful about the
yeah,
resentment.
because
Yeah.
he's doing all the stuff, and then we're like, one kid is like falling off the ledge, and I'm like setting things
Yeah.
on fire, and he's like, come on, guys. So
Yeah, yeah.
we decided we can't play that at least right now.
Yeah.
It's too
There could be
dramatic.
I could see where there are a couple of games where we're like, "Come on, take it seriously. What are you doing?" And my younger one's like, "I'll just wash dishes."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's fun though. Yeah, those are always fun. And then we try to do like family nights, obviously. I think one of the early things that we would still like everyone should have dinner together if we can, like unless you're like, out somewhere, but always have dinner together, just like make sure. And it's good. I think that's good. And then like we used to have regular movie nights, like Friday nights we would watch a movie, but now lately we just can't agree on anything. so so then it always goes to like flipping through Netflix, and then okay, we don't like anything here. Then you flip through Prime, then you flip through some other
And
thing.
then finally you're like, there's nothing to watch. I
Yeah,
give up.
and then I'm like, why do we have so many streaming services?
Yeah.
Well, how do we end up with so many streaming services? It's like costing as much as cable now. The whole point was like cut off cable, but now like you have to apply to all these streaming services, HBO Max and Paramount, and
And everyone is so like has their own specifics,
yeah,
right? Their own
exactly.
preferences.
Yeah.
So that makes it even harder to find. Like when they're little, you can just decide,
Mhm.
right? You can be like, hey, that's appropriate. We're
Yeah, yeah,
watching
we'll
that.
watch
Now it's
that.
like,
Like, yeah.
no, I don't want to.
Yeah.
No, I want to watch that. And then you're just like, oh my God, we can't unless you force it,
Yeah,
right? I think that's
you
the
have to
only
force
time we
it,
can,
and then
yeah.
eventually, like, one of them gets bored, and then you're like, "Oh, where'd you go?" They're gone.
Yeah. Or they start playing on their
Yeah,
phone and you're like, what are you
yeah, you're
doing?
like, "Turn it off."
Yeah. Do both your kids have cell phones?
Yeah, my older one had it because when we were living in the city. I think it was early. It was earlier than she should have had, but I think it was fifth grade when we were in the city. She wanted to walk to school with her friends that lived in the neighborhood. So they would like meet up in a corner and then kind of walk together. And so we're like, it might not be bad to just have her phone, then we could track her, make sure she got there. We know when she got there, so we could track, find out she got. So she got it pretty early. The younger one probably around the same time, and for no other reason other than like it was a hand me down. We had like an old phone, we had a hand me down, and then like we got this plan that was like, oh, you could get pay for 2 lines, get 2 lines free, and then it's family of four. So I think that might have happened because Yahoo got bought by Verizon at one point, and Verizon had employee plans. So it's like, oh, it's very cheap. It doesn't matter.
Right. But also, like you said, you could track your
Hmm,
kids
hmm.
wherever they were, right?
Right.
That makes it just so much easier
Yeah.
to just be like, okay, peace of mind. I know where they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Especially with the two of them. And then when they were walking home by themselves before the pandemic, before we were all locked up inside, they were like, we could see if they got home or if they need to get home. And that's kind of interesting. City living, I felt like was a little bit easier too because of that, because they could just like it's easier to walk. And then as far as safety, I felt like it was safer in some instances because we knew some of the store owners and then people because they own their own businesses, so you knew the owners, you knew the people that I worked with. So I remember telling her like, hey, if something ever happened, just run into the grocery store and just tell them like, hey, or just stay there and then call me or something. Same thing with like, oh, if you're at the gelato store, get gelato and just wait there. Whereas here,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
even here, like my wife is like more afraid of letting them walk at night. Like when my daughter wants to go running and it's dark because she's procrastinating the whole day and she's waiting till it's night. And she's like, there could be wild animals out there. Like we've seen coyotes out here and like mountain lions. And so like, oh, it's more scarier to let them out at night here than it is like in the city. That's the only big difference too.
Yeah, yeah. And it's probably a lot of residential, right?
Yeah,
So it's not
yeah.
like you can just run into a store and you're not going to run into someone's house.
Right.
So it's a little different.
Or like if you go to the malls here, like they don't know you. Like it's all like high school kids just working part time.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. That's
yeah,
true.
yeah. We used to go for a walk on the weekends and like just stop by stores and say hi to like the people that own the stores, and my daughter would get
Oh,
like free
that's
stuff.
nice. Yeah, yeah. And that just feels really
Yeah,
warm, right?
yeah,
Just this like sense of community. Whereas right now, everybody's kind of off doing their own
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
That's more of how that
yeah.
feels. At least for us, too, right here. It's like I've lived next to my neighbors for years. We don't really know each
Yeah.
other. Like I get home and I close that garage door. I'm like,
Right.
close, 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 close.
You say
Because
you're
like,
high and then close.
yeah, yeah. Or sometimes I'm like, hey, before they turn around to say hi,
Yeah.
close, 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 close. But it's just different,
Yeah, it's
right?
different. Yeah.
A different feeling. So the last thing I like to ask is what's something you would tell someone who's planning to have kids or something you wish you knew before you became a parent?
Yeah, what's funny is like we just had a baby shower at work today, and I was thinking of that. What stressed my wife out, and what's important is like there's no wrong or right way of doing things when you're raising kids. I think everyone has their own style, and sometimes you have to adjust based on the personality of the kid. My older one and my younger one have completely different personalities, and even when they were younger, they were completely different. It's not just I talked about the food part where my older one's always adventurous and always willing to try and wanted to eat everything that she saw. Whereas my younger one was just very picky. Like she didn't want to touch that. She thinks if it looked different or it was a funny color, she didn't want to touch that. So they're very different. And I think you just have to adapt to their personality and just feel it out because like I said, not every kid is different. And I think if my older daughter was more of a rebel, like I would encourage her to go out with her friends like I do now. I'd be like, no, you're coming home. Like I'm gonna pick you up at home. I'm gonna wait in the corner. You better be in the car. Like I said, the younger ones can make friends all the time. The older ones takes a little longer to make friends, but she makes like I think the friends that she has, she's very tight with. Like she still has friends from the old school, like in the city that she hangs out with. She's making friends here too, but I think it took her longer. It definitely took her longer to get more comfortable with people and stuff. So like like during the weekend and stuff or after school, sometimes I'm like, hey, I'll give you some money. Like, why don't you just go hang out if they're going to do something? But some of it was like again, like here, her freshman year, she decided she's gonna, oh, I'm gonna try golf, see what it's like because she's never played it before. But school ends up 3 o'clock. And then the practice didn't actually start till like 4:30, which I was like, "That's crazy. So what are you gonna do for an hour and a half? Like, do you want to hang out?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'll just hang out." And stuff, just walk around the block. I was telling her, like, yeah, if you have a friend, you guys could just go hang out someplace. Because her school is actually near a road that has some shops and restaurants and boba place, stuff like that. So it gets there. But yeah, definitely like there's no right or wrong way of doing anything. Everything is kind of like you got to feel for it, basically. And as long as they're happy, you've done your job, right? I think.
It sounds like a lot of what you're saying also is like you adapt to the way the kid
Yeah,
is, to what the kid needs. Like you said, if they were crazy, you probably wouldn't encourage them to go out all day.
right.
But like, like for my kids too, because I think pandemic and all that, they're a little bit more introvert. So we try to encourage them, go out with your
Yeah.
friends, go out, spend time. They're like, no, we're good.
Yeah.
So similar to what you're saying,
Yeah.
where because they're like that, we're trying to push them to go out. Whereas if they came to me and they were just like, I'm going out and I never hear from them, like
Right.
I
Right.
probably wouldn't
Yeah.
encourage them to go out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But definitely as a baby, like I think people like I remember my wife, she read books and she's like, "Oh, they have to do this at this time and this and this." But it never worked out. My younger one started walking at a very young age, I remember. And we were like, "Oh, that's crazy." Where my older one, she didn't care for walking. She didn't even care for crawling. She'd sit and scoot for a long time and we're like, "She ever gonna start walking?"
But then you don't know any better,
Right,
right?
right.
Because
You don't
that's like
know
your
any
first
better.
kid, and you're like, oh my
Yeah,
God, there's something wrong with my kid. They're not hitting that milestone.
yeah.
But it's like, she just didn't want to.
Yeah, she just didn't want to. She just felt like this was fine. Like,
Yeah.
I'm fine sitting here. But eventually, like, everyone, they get it, right? Eventually, they all start walking, they potty train.
Do you know anyone who's not? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess nobody would actually share that, but
Right?
also like, right? But I
Yeah,
just assume everybody
yeah,
goes through that eventually,
yeah.
even if some people take longer than
Yeah.
others, right?
I think both of them were potty trained at the daycare, and my older one was very motivated because, again, her closest friend at the daycare was a year older than her. So they had different sections. They had like the baby section and the toddler, and then if you're potty trained, you got to go to like the older kids part, right? And so her friend moved over there, and she was like, "Oh, I got to get over there." And she was like, "Yeah, I feel like in 2 weeks she was like done." She's like, "All right, I'm good." She had like one
It's
accident.
the
Yeah,
motivation.
yeah. She had like one accident at night, and that was it. Like she never like she didn't even just threw away diapers.
See, that's amazing. But then it's like if you read a book, it might be like, okay, it's going to take this long
Yeah,
for
right.
them to potty
Exactly.
train,
Like,
or you're going to have to do
yeah,
this, and then, right? And then you think that's how it should be. But then after having kids, you realize, like, no,
no.
that's just kind of an example,
Yeah,
but it's going to vary
yeah.
so drastically by kid.
It's like the weight percentile, right? Like doctors are like, "Oh, she's in this percentile and that percentile."
Oh my God, I
Yeah,
hated that. That stressed me out so
yeah,
much, right? When they were little, they were like, oh, your kid's in the 110 percentile. I was like, oh my God, my kid is
yeah,
overweight. And then the next time I go, they're like 60 percentile. And I'm like,
yeah,
wait, is that good? Is that bad? And then 40 percentile. And you're like, oh my God, right? And then the circumference of the
yeah, yeah.
head, they're like, oh, your kid's head is too
The kid
big.
had
And
a
you're like,
giant head.
oh
My
no.
older one really
Yeah,
had a
yeah,
giant
yeah.
head. She had like 110 percentile in head size, but her body weight was like tiny. I'm like, "Oh my god, she's gonna grow up to be like." What's the main
Right.
deal?
And now it's
Yeah,
fine,
yeah,
right? Now you can't even tell that her head was
yeah.
100% when she was little, right? It just all works out.
Yeah, yeah, it all just kind of works out. The best thing is like don't stress about that, I think. Because all that is just kind of relative. There's no right or wrong way. And I think parenting styles are different as well. I'm probably a little bit too relaxed in some of this stuff, but I think they're fine.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also like, I think you talked about kind of having a strong like sense of trust with the kids.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think it's like if you trust them a certain amount, they'll feel that, right? And when they know
Yeah.
they're being trusted, hopefully
Hmm.
it makes them less want to go and do things behind our backs,
Yeah.
because they know we trust them. We're not going to go and read their messages or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you for chatting with us today and sharing all your experiences and stuff. And
Oh yeah, you're welcome. The pleasure.
like you said
Yeah.
earlier, we've never talked about your like parenting journey, so it's really cool to hear about it. So,
Yeah, yeah. It was really fun.
yeah, so thank you. Thanks again for sharing all of
Thanks.
that. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully it's useful and not just junky.
No, it's great. I know I got a lot of useful tips there, and I'm sure a lot of parents did as well.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Parenthood Bites. We hope you found our episode informative and entertaining. If you're a parent in the tech world or know someone who is, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at chow@parenthoodbites.co, and we'll be thrilled to add your experiences to our interviews. That's chow, CHIAO, at parenthoodbites.co. And to our potential sponsors out there, if you're a business or know of one that would like to support and partner with our podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also reach us at chow@parenthoodbites.co. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Until next time, take care and stay curious.